Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack the biggest stories making waves today.
Absolutely. Lots to cover, from big market moves to international diplomacy, tech giants shifting gears, and even some major sports news.
It really feels like a dynamic picture globally right now.
It does. You see these threads connecting economic policy, global relations, even domestic issues. It's all intertwined.
Okay, let's kick things off with the Indian stock markets. Quite a day, wasn't it? Sensex up 1,200 points, Nifty crossing 25,000.
Yeah, really strong performance, both hitting 7-month highs.
What was the main spark for that, would you say?
Well, a lot of it seems tied to comments from President Trump during his Middle East trip. He hinted at a potential zero-tariff trade deal with India.
Okay. That would certainly generate some buzz.
Definitely. Investors get excited about the idea of fewer trade barriers. Plus, we also had some decent domestic inflation figures coming out.
So a combination of external hope and internal good news.
Pretty much. That positive sentiment really seemed to fuel the rally.
Now, looking at who is actually buying, it wasn't just domestic money, was it?
No, interestingly, foreign institutional investors, the FIIs, were big buyers. They pumped in something like 5,393 crore.
Wow, that's significant. About $650 million USD.
Yeah, that really drove the mid-session rally. But on the flip side, domestic funds were actually net sellers.
Really? They pulled back?
They did, to the tune of about 1,668 crore, or roughly $200 million USD. So you see a bit of a split there in strategy.
And the gains were quite focused on the big names: Reliance, ICICI, HDFC.
That's right. Those heavyweights really led the charge. Tells you where the big money felt confident, at least for that day.
And Indus Bank was the odd one out, the only Sensex stock down.
Yeah, pretty much across the board, optimism otherwise, heavily influenced by those key players.
It feels like the market's already thinking ahead, maybe anticipating an RBI rate cut in June.
That's definitely part of the narrative. Lower inflation gives the RBI more room to maneuver, and the potential trade deal, if it reduces costs for businesses, that also feeds into the expectation of a more accommodative monetary policy.
The scale is just huge. Investor wealth up by 5.3 lakh crore. That's around $64 billion USD in a single day.
It's massive. Really shows the power of sentiment. But, analysts like Van Adner are also cautioning that while the rate cut hopes are there, the zero-tariff deal is still very much uncertain. It could happen, but it's not a sure thing. So some volatility might still be ahead.
Got it. So optimism, but maybe cautious optimism.
Exactly.
Okay, sticking with the U.S. and trade, but shifting gears slightly, Apple seems to be rethinking its plans for making iPhones in India for the U.S. market.
Yeah, that's another really interesting development. It seems to follow President Trump reportedly suggesting to Tim Cook during that Doha visit that maybe they shouldn't source U.S.-bound iPhones from India.
Which is a shift, because hadn't Tim Cook previously said India would be a primary source for the U.S.?
He had, for the June quarter specifically.
Yeah.
So this looks like a reassessment.
Is this linked to Apple's big promises about investing in the U.S.? That $500 billion pledge, the new Houston facility, the 20,000 jobs?
It certainly seems connected. Apple has made these significant commitments to U.S. manufacturing and job creation.
Right.
So the administration might be nudging them, or they might be prioritizing fulfilling those domestic pledges, especially for products sold in the U.S.
But this doesn't mean Apple is pulling out of India altogether. Their broader diversification, the China Plus One strategy, that's still happening.
That seems to be the case. Indian government sources are saying Apple's commitments via Foxconn and Tata Group are still on track. Regular expansion, the China Plus One plan for other markets, that continues.
Okay.
This reassessment seems quite specific iPhones made in India for U.S. consumers. It just highlights how companies like Apple have to balance these complex geopolitical signals with their own business priorities.
And those priorities always involve things like revenue, competitiveness, productivity across different locations.
Exactly. It's a complex calculation.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overall India investment seems intact, just maybe not for direct U.S. supply in the way previously suggested.
It really underlines how global trade isn't just about economics anymore, is it? Politics, national priorities. They're deeply woven in.
Absolutely.
Now, turning to a major international relations story, India putting the Indus Waters Treaty on hold. That sounds serious.
It is. It's a very significant step. The stated reason from India is Pakistan's continued alleged support for cross-border terrorism.
And the message seems pretty blunt.
It's very clear. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar essentially said relations will now focus almost exclusively on terrorism. Holding the IWT in abeyance is a direct lever being pulled.
And India's setting tough conditions for any talks, like return of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, but only after Pakistan deals with terrorism.
Precisely. The message is, hand over terrorists, dismantle the infrastructure first, and then maybe we can talk. But the primary topic regarding Kashmir would be poke.
Can you just quickly remind us what the Indus Waters Treaty actually is, its significance?
Sure. It was brokered by the World Bank back in 1960. It basically divides the rivers of the Indus Basin. The eastern rivers, Beas, Ravi, Sutlej, their waters are largely for India.
Right.
The western rivers, Indus, Chenab, Jhelum, primarily for Pakistan, though India has some limited rights for things like power generation and irrigation on those too.
And it's generally held up over the years, despite conflicts.
Remarkably so. That's what makes suspending it now such a notable move. India is saying Pakistan's actions violate the spirit of the treaty.
And India is also rejecting any third-party mediation like President Trump's previous offers on Kashmir.
Yes. Jaishankar reiterated that. It's strictly bilateral, and the only topic on the table with Pakistan now is terrorism. India feels Pakistan knows what it needs to do.
There was also mention of broader factors influencing this decision: climate change, demographics.
Right. India seems to be signaling that beyond the immediate security issue, these longer-term changes, potential shifts in water availability due to climate change, growing populations needing water might also necessitate a fresh look at the treaty's framework eventually.
So it adds another layer to an already complex situation. It definitely feels like a hardening stance from India.
It certainly appears that way.
Okay, let's circle back to U.S.-India relations, specifically on the trade negotiation front. Are talks still ongoing despite the other headlines?
Yes, they are. Despite the nuances around Apple, the broader effort to forge a trade deal continues. India's focus seems to be on getting lower U.S. duties for its key labor-intensive exports.
Things like textiles and leather.
Exactly. Sectors that are really important for jobs and growth in India.
And high-level meetings are planned. Piyush Goyal meeting his U.S. counterparts.
That's right. Meeting scheduled with the U.S. Trade Representative and Commerce Secretary to tackle tariff reductions, non-tariff barriers, the big picture stuff.
While the technical teams handle the details.
Yeah, India's chief negotiator is leading talks on things like rules of origin, the nitty-gritty details. The expectation is India offers some concessions, the U.S. offers some back.
Are they looking at other recent deals as a guide, like what the U.K. or U.S. managed elsewhere?
It seems so. Those deals, where the U.K. got cuts on about 100 items and the U.S. on thousands, they kind of set a precedent, or at least a benchmark, for what might be possible.
And there's a bit of a deadline looming, isn't there? That 90-day tariff pause ends in early July.
Exactly. So there's probably some pressure, or at least incentive, to try and get something agreed, maybe even a smaller initial package, before that window closes. Build some momentum.
The idea of President Trump's reciprocal tariff strategy keeps coming up. How does that play into this?
Well, it basically means the U.S. is looking for a perceived balance. For every concession India gets, the U.S. will likely expect something equivalent in return.
And since India usually runs a trade surplus with the U.S.
Right. It implies India might need to increase its purchases of U.S. goods or services to kind of balance the books in the eyes of the U.S. negotiators pursuing that reciprocal approach.
So Minister Jaishankar is right to caution against jumping to conclusions. It sounds complex.
Definitely. He's stressing the need for a fair, balanced deal. But that principle of reciprocity is clearly a major factor shaping the talks.
Okay, changing lanes to defense now. The U.S. approving a missile sale to Turkey. What's involved there?
The U.S. State Department has greenlit a potential foreign military sale. It's for AIM-120C8 AMRAAM missiles. That's advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles.
AMRAAMs, okay, for Turkey.
Yes, for Turkey. Along with support, logistics. The whole package is estimated around $225 million. Congress has been notified.
And these are pretty advanced missiles, right? What's the strategic significance?
They are very capable, yes, beyond visual range capability. For Turkey, getting 53 of these, plus guidance sections and support, is a significant boost to their air defense.
And the U.S. perspective?
The U.S. government frames it as strengthening a NATO ally's security, which contributes to stability in Europe. It helps Turkey protect its airspace, and, importantly for the U.S., helps protect U.S. personnel in the region, too.
And the assessment is Turkey can handle these systems without upsetting the regional balance.
That's the official line from the State Department. They believe Turkey can integrate them smoothly and that it won't fundamentally alter the military balance.
No extra U.S. personnel needed on the ground either.
Correct. The deal is structured so it doesn't impact U.S. defense readiness directly.
So it seems like a sign of ongoing U.S.-Turkey defense cooperation within NATO, despite other disagreements they might have.
Exactly. It underscores that strategic partnership within the alliance remains important for the U.S., even when the broader relationship hits rough patches. This sale is a concrete example of that cooperation.
Right. Now let's bring it back to U.S. domestic policy. There's a debate heating up about H-1B visa renewals, specifically doing them within the U.S.
Yes, a really important issue for many skilled foreign workers and their employers. We've got several Indian-origin congressmen pushing for this change.
What's the core argument for domestic renewal?
The current system often forces people to leave the U.S. just to get their visa stamp renewed. That means travel costs, time away from work, uncertainty. It's disruptive. They argue it would be much more efficient to allow renewals within the U.S., pointing to a pilot program from 2024 that apparently worked quite well.
So streamline the process, reduce disruption, makes sense, but there's pushback.
Oh, definitely. Strong opposition, particularly from MAGI-A supporters and voices associated with an America First stance.
What's their argument against it?
Their core position is often that the H-1B program itself harms American workers by bringing in foreign labor, and some argue it contributes to unwanted demographic changes. They fundamentally oppose the program, so anything seen as facilitating it, like domestic renewal, is also opposed.
And the rhetoric gets quite heated.
Yes, some critics have used pretty strong language, even calling the advocating congressmen traitors. It really highlights the deep divisions over immigration policy.
So one side sees it as modernizing a system for skilled workers vital to U.S. companies.
Right. Reducing backlogs, providing stability.
While the other side sees the whole program as displacing Americans and wants it curtailed or eliminated.
Precisely. It's a clash between prioritizing economic needs met by skilled immigrants and prioritizing perceived protection of the domestic workforce and certain views on national identity. A very polarized debate.
Okay, shifting focus again back to India. A major move involving a Turkish company, Celebi Aviation. India revoked their security clearance.
Yes, that's right. Celebi Aviation Holding, which is based in Turkey, and its Indian subsidiaries have had their security clearance pulled. The official reason cited is national security concerns.
And this seems linked to Turkey's stance on Pakistan.
It appears to be a direct consequence, yes. Following Turkey's public support for Pakistan, India's Bureau of Civil Aviation Security took this step. It shows India prioritizing security interests, even if it impacts established business operations.
And Celebi handles a lot of work at major airports, right? Ground handling, cargo in Delhi, Mumbai.
They do. Significant volume, tens of thousands of flights, hundreds of thousands of tons of cargo annually, so it's not a small disruption.
Is there a plan to manage that disruption?
The government, through Minister Ram Mohan Naidu, has assured that alternative arrangements are being put in place quickly. They want seamless operations and aim to retain the employees affected. Delhi Airport, for example, is already bringing in other companies like ASATS and Bird Group.
Celebi tried to argue they're Indian-led locally with lots of non-Turkish international investors.
They did make that point, highlighting ownership from Canada, the US, UK, etc. But it seems the decisive factor for India was the ultimate parent company being based in Turkey, especially given the current geopolitical context.
And the market reacted. Celebi's stock dropped in Istanbul.
Yes, reportedly down 10%. Shows the real-world business impact when geopolitics intersects with commerce like this.
It really does. Okay, finally, let's touch on the world of sport. A big surprise, Virat Kohli retiring from Test cricket.
Huge news in the cricket world.
Yeah.
Really caught many off guard, especially since it follows Rohit Sharma also retiring from Test not long ago. Feels like the end of an era.
And he was close to a major milestone, wasn't he? 10,000 Test runs.
Just 770 runs short, which makes the timing even more surprising to some.
Did the Indian Cricket Board try to change his mind? Especially with an England tour coming up?
Reports suggest they did, yes, but apparently he was quite firm in his decision. Ravi Shastri, the former coach, confirmed Kohli had spoken to him and felt it was simply the right time.
Kohli himself mentioned the lessons Test cricket taught him.
Yes, his farewell note was quite poignant. Talked about how the format tested and shaped him. Suggests deep respect, but maybe also a feeling of having given everything he could to it.
Shastri mentioned mental fatigue, even for someone as fit as Kohli.
He did, and that's a crucial point. The intensity, the pressure of Test cricket over so many years. It takes a toll. mentally as much as physically. Even for the fittest, like Kohli, maybe that relentless intensity just felt unsustainable in that format.
But he's not quitting cricket entirely, still playing ODIs and IPL.
That's right. Fans will still see him in the shorter formats for India and for Royal Challengers Bengaluru. So it's a farewell to tests, not to cricket overall.
Still, a massive shift for India's test team, losing both Rohit and Kohli in relatively quick succession.
Absolutely. As Shastri said, replicating Kohli's passion and impact in Test cricket will be incredibly difficult. It marks a significant transition.
Wow. We've certainly covered a lot of ground today. Market surges, tricky trade talks, geopolitical shifts, security decisions, immigration debates, and a cricket legend stepping back.
It's a real mix, isn't it? But you see the connections. How a comment about trade could lift markets, how geopolitical stances affect business clearances, how domestic politics influence immigration rules.
A key theme seems to be that constant flux in international relationships and national policies. We saw it with U.S.-India trade signals, Apple's strategy shift, the Indus Waters Treaty situation, the contrasting moves involving Turkey.
That's a great point. That interplay between economics and international relations is so visible right now. Decisions in one area ripple outwards, affecting trade, security, investment. Everything feels connected and, frankly, a bit unpredictable.
So, thinking about all these dynamics, especially those mixed signals from the U.S. on trade and investment with India, what do you think looms as the biggest opportunity, but also perhaps the biggest challenge for India's economy on the world stage right now? Something for you, our listeners, to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for tuning in.